Hello and welcome. I'm Pallavi Sharma and you're watching Bees World Weekly, a show where we bring you the top stories of the week from across the world. Let's start with the market check. Indian equity indices ended lower on April 24th. At close, Sensex was down 1.27% at 76,681.29 points, and Nifty was down 1.14% at 23,897.95 points. Biggest Nifty losers were Infosys, HCL Tech, TCS, Tech Mahindra, and Sun Pharma, while the gainers included Hindalco, Coal India, Nestle, SBI, and Trent. Nifty mid-cap and small-cap indices declined 1% each. All sectoral indices ended in red, with IT index shedding 5%, while healthcare, consumer durables, realty, telecom, pharma, and media down 1% each. Indian rupee ended 14 paise lower at 94.25 per dollar on April 24th. The White House has a list, a secret tiered ranking of America's closest allies, sorted into who's been good, who's been bad, and who's about to pay the price. It sounds like something out of the Cold War thriller, but this is NATO in April 2026. The NATO alliance is facing one of the biggest internal crises in decades, and the trigger? A classified US ranking system that categorizes allies based on their defense spending and, more importantly, their support for US in the Iran war. Reports reveal that Trump has divided NATO allies into tiers, labeling them as reliable partners and underperforming allies. Countries that supported US military operations or increased defense spending are likely to be in the nice list. Others, especially those who refuse to support the Iran war, are under scrutiny. The internal paper was reportedly prepared ahead of NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte's visit to Washington, and it appears to reflect Pentagon's bias about model allies deserving special favor while others then facing consequences. And this list is reportedly being used to decide the future of US policy towards these nations. But why is this happening now? The framework is tied to US military campaign against Iran known as Operation Epic Fury, which began on February 28th. Trump expected his NATO partners to fall in line, opening their airspace, offering their bases, backing the mission. Most of the Europe, though, said no. Spain, the most vocal European opponent, declared its airspace closed for US military planes involved in the Iran conflict. France and United Kingdom also either declined or delayed support requests related to airspace access, basing, or logistics in the Iran war. Italy reportedly denied US bombers the use of military base in Sicily, though the Italian government moved very quickly to downplay any tensions. So who made it to the nice list is the question. Countries like Romania and Bulgaria, which were more helpful in basing and logistics, are expected to benefit. Poland and Romania both are already seen as being in Trump's good grace, could see an increase in US military presence. The naughty list, meanwhile, is headlined by Western European powers who resisted. Spain, France, and Britain are already being discussed as countries that either refused or delayed any assistance. Here's the key question though. What does being on the naughty list actually mean? Officials say options could include shifting troops, scaling back exercises, or redirecting military cooperation away from bad members and towards more compliant ones. The White House has been deliberately vague, but the messaging has been pointed. But critics, including some within Trump's own party, are questioning this logic. But this is not just a political issue. It also impacts the global economy. A weaker NATO means more geopolitical instability, which leads to volatile oil prices and markets to react very negatively to uncertainty. We have already seen how the Iran war disrupted the energy markets and global growth. So the Iran war didn't just divide the Middle East, it has cracked the architecture of Western security that had been together for 75 years. If you thought that Strait of Hormuz will reopen as soon as the war ends, think again, because the Pentagon has revealed something very shocking. As per a report, the Pentagon has informed US lawmakers that it will take at least 6 months to clear the naval mines installed by Iran in the strait after the war ends. But why? Our next report tells you more.
As the Iran conflict drags on, a new and dangerous layer has emerged, one that could outlast the war itself. The focus is on the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow but critical waterway through which nearly 20% of the world's oil supply passes. And right now, it's not just blocked, it's potentially mined. According to briefings by the Pentagon to US lawmakers, clearing these mines could take up to 6 months. And here's the catch: the process may not even begin until the war actually ends. So what exactly are these mines? These aren't old-school explosives just floating around. Reports suggest Iran has deployed smart naval mines, some guided using GPS, others strategically placed by forces like the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, using small boats. These mines are designed to be hard to detect, harder to remove, and extremely dangerous for commercial ships. Even a single undetected mine can damage or sink a tanker, which is why shipping companies are already reluctant to take the risk. And that's where the real impact begins. Even if a ceasefire holds and peace talks move forward, global shipping through the strait may not fully resume anytime soon. Insurance costs for ships rise, routes get diverted, and supply chains slow down. Experts warn that just the presence of mines, whether active or suspected, is enough to keep traffic limited. Clearing them isn't simple either. It involves drones, underwater robots, helicopters, and highly trained divers scanning vast stretches of water, one section at a time. It's slow, expensive, and incredibly risky. And while all of this plays out, the global economy continues to feel the pressure. Oil prices remain elevated, energy markets stay volatile, and countries dependent on Gulf oil are forced to look for alternatives, often at higher costs. So this is no longer just a wartime disruption. It's turning into a prolonged economic challenge.
When you go out these days, the first thing that comes out of your mouth is, "It's so hot." But how does this climate change impact you apart from the tan and dehydration? Well, it's a huge impact. India is about to gamble its entire economy on the sky. One weather pattern forming thousands of miles away in the Pacific Ocean could decide whether your grocery bills spike or whether Reserve Bank cuts or hikes interest rates. The 2026 monsoon forecast just dropped and the numbers are alarming. The IMD has forecast a below normal monsoon for 2026, the first such warning in 3 years. India is expected to receive only 92% of its long period average rainfall between June and September. That might sound like a small shortfall, but here's where it gets serious. An El Nino is forming. El Nino is a warming of Central and Eastern Pacific Ocean that disrupts global weather patterns. For India, it weakens the monsoon winds that carry moisture from the sea into the subcontinent. Historically, El Nino years have meant trouble. In the last 6 El Nino events, India received below average rains every single time. The 2009 El Nino, even though it was classified as weak, caused rainfall to crash to just 78% of normal, the worst in 37 years. Weather models now suggest that 2026 El Nino could be strong. There is a potential silver lining too. A positive Indian Ocean dipole may develop in the second half of the season, which typically brings more rain and could partially offset El Nino's damage. But that's a lot of ifs to bet an economy on. So why does this matter? The monsoon delivers nearly 70% of India's total annual rainfall. Agriculture contributes about 18% of India's GDP, but here's the crucial part. It employs almost half of India's 1.5 billion people. Only 55% of farmland is irrigated, which means nearly half of Indian agriculture is entirely dependent on rain falling from the sky at the right time in the right places. A weak monsoon doesn't just mean lower crop yields for rice, cotton, soybeans and pulses during the summer kharif season. It also damages winter rabi crops like wheat and rapeseed because the soil retains less moisture. It depletes reservoirs and groundwater. It reduces hydropower generation, which accounts for about 6% of India's electricity mix. Now let's follow the money. When harvests shrink, food prices rise. Food accounts for nearly 1/3 of India's consumer price index, the basket that RBI watches to set interest rates. Over the past 2 years, above average rainfall helped cool food inflation, giving the central bank room to cut lending rates and support economic growth. A below normal monsoon flips that equation. Rising food prices, potentially compounded by global commodity costs driven by geopolitical tensions, could push inflation higher and force the RBI to pause rate cuts or even hike interest rates. This would slow down investment, squeeze businesses, and make loans more expensive for everyone from home buyers to entrepreneurs. Now, there is also a trade angle. If domestic production of pulses or oil seeds falls short, India will have to increase imports of edible oil like palm oil or soybean oil. The government may also restrict exports of certain grains, as it did in the 2023 El Nino year, to protect domestic supplies. All of this puts pressure on the current account and the rupee, which has already been among the worst performing Asian currencies in 2026. So what should you watch out for? The IMD will release an updated forecast in late May with more details on the expected monsoon onset date and regional distribution. Keep an eye on how July and August unfold, because that's when El Nino effects are expected to intensify. Indian agriculture is more resilient than it used to be. Irrigation has expanded, seed technology has improved, and policy responses are faster. But resilience is not immunity. A below normal monsoon won't necessarily cause a crisis, but it narrows the margin for error across the entire economy. It is a very volatile time for the world. US-Iran talks have not brought much relief, but instead added more to the uncertainty. One country, though, is suffering because of the delayed US-Iran negotiations more than others. It's the mediator itself, Pakistan. Citizens of Islamabad are facing COVID-like lockdown as Pakistan decided to host US-Iran talks. No schools, no work for laborers, and no food for them. This is how the situation is looking like for a common man in Islamabad. Our next report explains why.
As the world watches the Iran war and possible US-Iran peace talks, an entire country is quietly paying the price. Pakistan, which is hosting these crucial negotiations, has effectively turned parts of its capital into a lockdown zone, and ordinary citizens are struggling to survive. In Islamabad, streets are empty, shops are shut, and public transport has been suspended. What was meant to be a high-profile diplomatic moment has turned into daily hardship for thousands. Workers have been told to stay home, businesses have been forced to close, and for daily wage earners, that means one simple reality: no work, no money, no food. For many, it feels like going back to the COVID lockdown days. People have even been evicted from hostels as security measures tightened, leaving them scrambling for shelter. Some can't even return to work because transport is shut or rents are unaffordable. One resident described it simply: "It feels like living in a cage." And this crisis is not just about movement, it's about survival. The ongoing Iran conflict has already triggered an energy crisis in Pakistan. With the Strait of Hormuz disrupted, Fuel shortages have led to long power cuts and gas scarcity. Restaurants are shutting down, transport workers are seeing their incomes drop sharply, and entire sectors are slowing down. For people at the bottom of the pyramid, the impact is devastating. Daily wage laborers haven't earned in days, and hunger is becoming a real threat. As one worker put it, if there's no work, there's no way to feed their children. Even students are suffering. Major exams have been shifted to other cities, forcing candidates to spend money they don't have or miss out entirely. For many women, travel restrictions make it even harder, pushing them to consider skipping their exams altogether. What makes this situation worse is the uncertainty. The US and Iran haven't even confirmed when the next round of talks will happen, yet the restrictions continue, and the lockdown keeps getting extended. Pakistan may be at the center of global diplomacy right now, but for its citizens, it feels like the country has come to a standstill.
Imagine a deal where 100% of your exports become duty-free overnight, where a country commits $20 billion investment into your economy, and where jobs, students, and businesses all benefit at the same time. India has pulled off a deal like this with New Zealand, and it is also one of the fastest ever trade deals with a country. India and New Zealand announced negotiations for a free trade agreement in March 2025. Following several rounds of negotiations, the India-New Zealand FTA was concluded in December 2025 itself. On April 27, India is set to sign the major agreement, marking a historic shift in economic ties. This deal goes far beyond just trade. It covers exports and tariffs, investments, jobs and mobility, and even student opportunities. It is India's 7th FTA in 5 years, the latest one being with Oman. So why exactly is this deal important? At the core of this deal is the market access. The biggest headline is that 100% of Indian exports to New Zealand will become duty-free. This means Indian products like textiles, leather, gems and jewelry, engineering goods and processed foods will become instantly more competitive in New Zealand. On the other side, New Zealand will get tariff cuts on 95% of its exports to India. But here's the smart move. India has protected sensitive sectors like dairy and agriculture, so local farmers aren't hurt. So it's not a fully open market, it's a strategically balanced deal with the country. Now let's talk about some of the standout features of this deal. New Zealand will invest $20 billion into India over 15 years. Jobs and mobility will get a boost with visa pathways for skilled professionals and students. There will be a push for labor-intensive sectors like textiles, leather, footwear, and more. Agricultural productivity partnership will also improve farming efficiency, and the FTA will also act as a gateway to Oceania markets beyond just New Zealand. For India too, this is a massive export opportunity. Indian goods will now get zero duty access, making them cheaper in New Zealand. MSMEs will get a big boost with this, and services like IT, healthcare, education will also get new opportunities. For New Zealand, on the other hand, the biggest win is access to India's massive market of 1.4 billion people. Their exports like wool, meat, fruits and wine will get easy entry. New Zealand businesses will get to tap into the fastest growing major economy too. So basically, New Zealand gets scale and India gets market dominance. This deal could double bilateral trade in coming years as well. Merchandise trade between India and New Zealand grew from $873 million in 2023 to 24 to $1.3 billion in 2024 to 25, registering a growth of 49%. India's services exports to New Zealand also grew by 13% in 2024, reaching $634 million, driven by IT and business services. And crucially, India has maintained a positive trade balance with New Zealand, with Indian exports having grown 130% over the past decade against only 7.21% growth in imports. So with this deal, India is expanding its footprint beyond Asia into the Pacific. For 5 years straight, Dubai was one real estate market the world couldn't stop talking about. Prices up 70%, $500 million in luxury deals, millionaires flying from London, Mumbai and Beijing to park their wealth in the sun. But this month, something changed. For the first time since the pandemic, Dubai home prices have fallen. And the story of why tells you everything about how fragile even the hottest markets in the world really are. Dubai's housing market has been one of the world's top performers, with property values surging over 70% since 2020, driven by foreign investors, expats, and the city's tax-free appeal. Dubai's luxury real estate market grew for 5 years straight, with 500 properties selling last year for more than $10 million, up from just 30 in 2020. An estimated 9,800 millionaires moved to Dubai in 2025 alone, bringing in $63 billion wealth, more than any other city in the world, according to reports. Dubai had turned wealth attraction into a national strategy. No income tax, no capital gains tax, golden visas, and a reputation as the safest city in the most volatile region on earth. That last part, though, is now being tested. A home price index compiled by ValueStat, a Dubai-based property consulting firm used by some of the country's largest banks, fell 5.9% in March from the previous month, marking the first decline since 2020. Even with that drop, the gauge is only back to where it was 6 months ago. So this isn't a collapse, but it is a meaningful reversal of momentum. The sales data tells an even sharper story. Total residential sales value fell nearly 20% month on month to 37.2 billion dirhams, about $10.1 billion in March, while the number of transactions dropped from nearly 16,000 to around 13,000. In off-plan market, where buyers purchase before a property is built, sales value dropped around 13% in March. Now, this segment accounts for nearly 75% of total transactions and tends to react first to sentiment shifts because it is more speculative in nature. The trigger was geopolitical and sudden. On February 28, US-Israeli strikes on Iran triggered a regional war, after which over 1,700 missiles and drones were fired towards the UAE, with more than 90% intercepted by the country's air defense systems. But the interception rates aren't the story that spooked investors. The hits that got through were: Dubai's five-star Fairmount the Palm Hotel was struck by an explosion. Debris from a downed Iranian drone set fire to the iconic Burj Al Arab Hotel, and Dubai airport was damaged by a missile strike. That shattered the one thing that Dubai had sold the world for decades: safety. Dubai stock market dropped sharply, with the DFM real estate index losing over 15% in a single week. The Iran war shook Dubai's status as a global wealth hub, as large numbers of expats began to leave and family offices and wealth managers reconsidered their Middle East footprint. Luxury sales in Dubai also fell to roughly half of pre-war levels, with European luxury firms forced to reroute shipments through Oman and Saudi Arabia due to the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, adding delivery delays of up to 20 days. Dubai had bounced back from every crisis before: the 2009 debt crash, the 2020 pandemic, the 2022 Russia-Ukraine shock. Each time the market recovered and then surged to new highs. But this time is different in one crucial way. The crisis didn't come from far away. It came to Dubai's doorstep itself. Whether this is a blip or a turning point is a question that every investor is now asking. That's all for this week. I will see you in the next. Keep watching ET Now for more such news and views.